Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another fantastic episode. We're on to part 3 of this parcel shelf. So what you would have last seen was me having an epic ramble about the coupe related parts. I'll admit not everybody would have liked that one, and not everybody did, but there would have been a fair few who did. So you know, not everything everybody's gonna like, so it's just wait for the next one to see if you like that one. I just can't make everybody happy, so you know, but I needed to relay some information and discuss some parts and things like that, and yes, I think it's all progressing along quite nicely. Peter's Corolla has arrived. That turned up today. I think that took a grand total of 2 days to get from Adelaide to Melbourne, which is awesome. I think that was transported by Open-Ica, I don't really know how to pronounce it, but they did it. They were pretty good. Highly rate them, actually. I was impressed, and I don't think they were astronomically expensive, which is a bonus. So he's got that car now. Apparently he's pretty darn chuffed with it, which I suspected he would. And yeah, it's all lovely. The parcel shelf section I've got to do on this, first thing I'm going to do to it is I've got to widen it slightly. Now, somebody did mention, is the quarter panels too wide in this car? No, because the factory parcel shelf fitted, and all those other pieces that Jamie made all fitted, so the car is the right width. Let me just say that right now. It's the rear spares piece being too small. I'm going to fold out the boot channel a little bit so I can get my spot welder in there and just along the lip, and then because I have to reshape that boot channel anyway, because they're not quite up to scratch, I'm going to reshape it. So if I fold it out, it doesn't matter, I've got to reshape it anyway, so that's what I'm going to do with that. And then I'll just fold up a couple of new ends, sit the panel in about where it's going to go, and then join in 2 new ends so it's wide enough, and then stick the panel in. It's just, these are some of the things we're going to work on with Jamie about potentially tweaking the rear spares panels just that little bit more, potentially reshaping the boot channels. He does a fantastic job at the top piece. Once again, highly recommend you buy the reworked ones that he's tickled, because they're so much better. And we're just talking about getting the boot channel reshaped from a horrendous round to the shape it's actually supposed to be, with a couple of folds in it, so it actually looks right when it's in the car. But I mean, most people probably, the at-home guy probably doesn't care, but I care, if that makes sense. So there's that. The Clevo build is coming along. I've got the crank in and 4 pistons. I have done a video on that, but I'm going to wait till I have a bit more footage before making a video on that. And I was actually thinking about putting a video together because I have yet another grey motor block. I got a short block with pistons and crank and stuff in it, and I have done tons of cylinder heads. I've got enough parts to build one myself, so I've got the bottom end of one sitting here. I'd be curious to see if it's currently seized, so I'm thinking about doing a video on just seeing if I can piece together a motor and see if I can make it live. So yeah, I'll do that for fun, and yeah, well, let's get stuck into this. Enough chit chat, paddywhack, give the dog a bone. First things first, we're going to drop the parcel shelf in, mark it up, and then we're going to trim up a couple of new ends, and then once we've welded those onto the new panel, take it back out. I've got to actually do some repairs to the actual quarter panels where the panel sits in, and then we can actually weld it in, and that bit will be fairly straightforward. So chaps, my first port of call here is, I know this seems ridiculous to do this, but see, we've got a little, well, it's not really a hole, it is a hole, but it's not a rust hole, but there's still pitting in here, and I'm not really, and you can see where they missed with the spot welder at day 1, so it sort of crimpled it a little bit. There is a step or recess, if you prefer, going through here, And yes, that's actually this. Yeah, it's funny, both sides have got a slightly different shape through there. So I've just whittled up a new piece with a step in it to go here, and I will replace this in a second. So I basically want, when this panel goes on, for it to go onto super clean new steel, which, you know, is fairly easy. I got my little stepping tool through there, or a joggler, or whatever you want to call, and I just stepped myself a little fold into it, or a recess, whatever you prefer. I mean, it's not going to be great, but at least it'll look right. And then obviously just walked it through a folder. You could actually make this piece in a bench vise. It's really not that difficult. So, and then obviously just trimmed it down. So I've got to tweak this just a little bit more, because it's got to be a little bit tighter in this fold, and probably the bottom two need a little bit of loving. But then I'll just mark it, run a blade through there, and just, you know, drop that in, trim that down a little bit. It's just a bit too long. It'll get rid of all the junk in here, and then this panel will sit on top of there and have something lovely to weld to. I should even be able to spot weld it, considering where that is, and then I can run brass through there as well, brazing, because that's how the factory did it. So they did, weird they needed both, but they put spot welds and brass, yes. And then I'll do that to that side, and then we'll make two ends for here, and fold this out, then we can put it in. Alrighty chaps, we have the boot lid sitting in place. As you can see, lines up actually extremely well, and we have a beautiful, and I mean stunning, gap. It's sitting up a bit there because the boot lid lip is rolled up a little bit, so don't worry about that. But look at that, sitting back on the factory marks there, it is just stunning. Really happy with that. Now I decided what I'm going to do here is, when I do this section, because these two lips are actually supposed to be welded together, I'm going to actually make these two halves as a, you know, two halves, and weld them together, and then sit them in there, and then weld around that way, so that they're actually joined in between like the factory as well. I know that's probably the most convoluted way of doing it, but I think it's going to be one of the better ways. So I'll just trim that off when it's time, and do a right angle fold with extra steel, and then do another right angle fold with this piece, and join them in the middle like the factory would, and then basically weld like that, if that makes any sense. Do that to both sides. I only had to replace the inner on this side. I was able to weld up that side. So I think rolling the boot lip out, I can prep it now and actually spot weld this in for the final time. I'm very, very happy with the fitment of this panel. Look at that, it's even crisp. So moving right along, I think it's time to get this prepped and welded in. Alrighty chaps, after much hammering and dollying and whatnotting, this is now close to what it should look like. I'm not a magician, and of course I do have the downside with the fact that this panel here, as you can see on the other side, if I go over here, there's not actually enough metal. It sort of dips off, and it's really wonky, so I can only shape it the best I can, but at least I've put a crease in it. I've actually caught myself on the spot welder. Ow. So I rolled it out first so I could get the spot welder in there, and then I straightened it up, as in straight up, and then I folded with a hammer and dolly about 1,000,000 times, hitting, put the sort of second fold in further up, because the way this comes from Rare Spares is it's I think it's actually too wide, and it's just a perfect curve, and it just looks wrong. It's supposed to be flat with a fold, so I worked out to be it's 10mm up with a 5mm fold. That looks about right. So, and now it's a lot closer, and I reckon a boot seal would have a fighting chance of actually staying in there. So all I've got left to do, and I put my brass in through here as well, and when I fix up this piece I'll do a little bit more. So we've got spot welds through here, joining this to this, and put the brass in like the factory. Now all we have to do is sort out these hockin' great big gaps that are at either end. Fairly straightforward. We just slice up, slice and dice, make up this piece, test fit it, then make this piece, and then spot weld them to the two flanges together, and then we'll drop it back in and just weld it in. And basically it'll finish that off rather nicely actually, and then we can just coat this. I'm going to coat this in a primer in a second, because it's a bit rainy at the moment, and you know, surface rust builds up pretty darn fast, but we are going for a fairly nice and factory finish. I did reshape my spot welder tip a little bit so it could fit in there a bit better. Looking rather lovely. Still love this panel from Jamie. Magic. So the thing we were working on is getting him to rework this gutter so that it so if he does this and this, then the panel is perfect. So although he can't be held responsible for if the panel isn't actually big enough. For example, this one, all he can do is turn their sort of the original panel's sort of half attempt into a piece that you'd actually want to put in your car. So as you can see, it's looking rather lovely. So I'll catch you up in a second once I've trimmed off this well, basic flat piece and started folding up a new end. Now I did say I was going to weld these two together, and I still am, but what I'm going to do is make this piece match up with this piece. So I've just tacked it, and I'm going to recut those tacks. So what I'll do is I'll make this piece that matches in with this. As you can see, it's got a lovely little fold down there and everything, and then I'll tack that together. So when I have this piece in, I'll tack it to this piece, then I'll spot weld them together, and then I'll just recut the tacks at the other end so that it looks like it's factory. And then obviously, so like I said, I'll make this piece so it matches up there, tack the two sides together, cut these tacks, pull it out as a together unit so it drops in and out, and spot weld through effectively the seam there, and then drop it back in and weld it up. So just have a weld through here, across here, down there, and then hopefully this piece will have the same, you know, bit of steel that's missing, and it'll fill the gap and look as factory as possible. Alrighty chaps, now this is what I was talking about. I've just tacked, so this is effectively that panel, and this is the edge of the quarter panel. So obviously it was tacked in there. I put one tack because I'm going to grind that tack out eventually, but this is actually how the factory joined them together. So effectively under the car here, so if you looked up, you'd see a little bit of the quarter panel that would come down, have a little kick in it, and then this filler panel would sit in there, and you'd find 3 or 4 spot welds through here. I'm going to stick 3 in there, I reckon. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll have my joins welded together, and then I'll grind that little guy out, and then we can stick this back in the hole and, you know, weld it all back together, and we'll have, you know, the thing looking pretty much bang on. And I just do that to both sides, and then that top panel will be done, because effectively that's what's missing off the ends. One, they're not, luck of the draw really, whether or not you're going to get one long enough, but two, that's, you know, that's what that little fold is that kicks up, is actually the fold that goes down. But 9 times out of 10 most people just run a weld straight through effectively that groove there and then grind a groove into it, but I kind of really like to do it properly, so I'm going to spot weld that and stick it in. Alrighty chaps, I'm going to end the video here before I do the other side, for fear of video being excessively long. I was just looking at my work before. I mean, this side's the panel is beautiful, brazed in nicely. I lengthened it there. I was looking at this thinking, I think later down the track I might, when I do this, I might join it in just here and get rid of that. I mean, that's where the weld is and it's perfectly fine, but I don't like the look of it. So when I do this repair at another date, I might go past it and, you know, make it look like that. But that is the end of the parcel shelf repair, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I would strongly recommend you chase down the starting, because this is part 3, you chase down the reworked panel with the square edges. You don't necessarily have to go to the extreme I did with straightening up the edges. I'm just a little bit crazy, or brazing, and you don't really have to do that. I did that because I like to return things to factory. So the factory braze through here, that's actually some factory brass there, so I put, you know, right through here, I re-brazed it, and it's spot welded and re-brazed through here, and then it's actually spot welded up and under here as well, so as you saw before. So effectively that whole panel, aside from that side obviously, but this side is all joined in exactly how the factory did it. And obviously there's little bits of tweaking to do in the future, and I've got to remove this weird piece of gutter here and redo this, so there's lots of little fiddly bits that I want to do that aren't particularly film worthy, but I thought I'd run you through the basics of the parcel shelf repair. You don't have to go to the extreme I do. I'm just crazy. So I hope you enjoyed it. The panels are fantastic, they fit beautifully. Pay extra for the reworked one because they're actually significantly better, and I hope it was potentially useful, and I'll see you on the next episode.